And I think we're live. Yes, we are live. I'm here with my new friend John. How you doing, John?
Good, David. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I just got home from work and ate, and now I'm looking forward to finding out about you. I go out of my way not to learn about my guest until I actually chat with them, so it's more fun. It's more fun that way. So I want you to talk us through the whole journey. I don't know if you were raised with religion or a philosophy or a worldview at all, but just sort of walk us through how you came to believe what you believe today. So talk us through the whole thing.
Yeah, I love that deep question. That's all. It's a big question. I'll try to do my best. I grew up in a small town in rural Oklahoma, raised by a two-parent family. Had a sister, and we were raised Southern Baptist. Both my mom and my dad came from Southern Baptist families. Now my parents were pretty progressive, pretty open-minded, pretty liberal. So I kind of had that Southern Baptist conservative church thing, and at home it was kind of not that. So that's interesting. I'm happy with that. It was kind of a dichotomy that I think served me well. And I never really felt God in the church. I had questions as a child about why are the Mormons going to hell, or why are the Catholics going to hell? That doesn't make any sense to me. That doesn't make any sense. Like, why are just Protestant evangelical Southern Baptists going to heaven? That doesn't, I spent some time in the hallway, out in the hallway at Sunday school. So, um, uh, so that was my journey as a child. I kind of got away from the church as I got older, as a teenager, and I knew that that college wasn't for me, and I was going to enlist in the military straight out of high school. And so I enlisted in the U.S. Army as a counterintelligence special agent, and my dog tag said Christian. I wasn't a Christian at that point, really practicing, but like that's still my identity at that point. Uh,
You still have the
so
dog tag?
I do, yeah. I still have my dog tags, my original dog tags.
You can, if you're no longer a Christian, you can mail it to me. I'll wear it.
Right?
Just kidding. Just
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah. So
Well, you'll get to the punchline if you're Christian today or not, but I'm curious. But keep going with your story.
yeah, sure, sure.
One thing,
And
just one
I
thing I want to interject. You look very young. Like, are you in your mid
I'm
twenties or
42. No, I'm
really,
40. I'm 40. Yeah,
really,
42.
really?
Yeah.
Ah, good genes.
Yeah, I think thank you. Yeah, my dad has aged really well, so hopefully I do.
Okay.
Um Yeah, I'm 42 years old. I don't feel 42, but I am. And so as I enlisted, and I I enlisted about a year before 9/11. So by the time I got out of basic training, by the time I got out of um my job training, I was only 6 months at my permanent duty station at Fort Gordon, Georgia, before the war kicked off. So um here we are at war, and with 9/11 happening, and I spent the next 12 out of 15 years of my adult life in Kuwait, Iraq, and Afghanistan. And part of that was as a soldier, part of that was as a civilian doing the same thing I had done as a soldier, basically. And I lost track of God at this point. I didn't have time for God. I didn't have time for spirituality, and I didn't have time for thinking about all that. I was working 100, 110 hours a week, 7 days a week
Oh
for
yeah.
years on end.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow.
I've had this whole other life, like,
Is that a
within
typical
my life.
military schedule, or you were doing?
It depends. I mean, for 6 months at a time, a year at a time, it can be.
Oh yeah.
Um, I was kind of an exception to the rule. I just kept going back. My wife was with me that whole time. She had a similar job to me, so we did it together. And it's not typical to stay in that environment. People will do it for a year. People will do it for 6 months. They'll leave. So for us to keep doing it, that's not common at all. Um, but I was addicted to the job. I was a war junkie. I was addicted to being around planes and helicopters and action. And, I was good at what I did. I thought I was important. When I walked into a room, people wanted to know what I had to say, and all that kind of stuff. There's ego. There was ego there. Not just ego, but it played a part. And like I said, I had the choice to do that. My other option was to come back to the US and go to the Beltway in DC and kind of work in a cubicle and battle traffic twice a day. And I couldn't see myself living that life after I've done all these things. And so I just kept doing what I knew was familiar to me. So so there was no room for God there, really, no time for me. I wasn't a spiritual person at all. And then I came home, my wife and I came home after all those years. And the next 7 years after that, I was just kind of wondering, like the desert or swamp, whatever you want to call it. I was lost and I didn't really have an identity outside of having been that person that was really good at his job and did all this stuff and was important. I didn't know who I was. So there was a lot of healing or attempts to heal, PTSD, anxiety, depression, whatever, I had it all, probably still do, but much better now. But the real moment for me was about 2 years ago. I had a moment that was this profound moment of understanding or clarity. Some would call it awakening. And the universe just made sense to me. I felt this oneness with everything, that we're all connected, it's a very loving kindness type thing. And that I knew what my higher purpose was. My dharma in the world was to go help people help themselves and find their wholeness and find their light and talk to people about their journey and share mine and see if we can have a conversation and ask better questions, find better answers, and just be open-minded and talk, much like you and I are having a conversation today. So
That's cool.
That's kind of the cliff notes of my spiritual journey.
What about the parents and siblings? What's the situation? Are they Baptist today or what?
None of them are Baptist still. My dad is agnostic at best, atheist at worst.
Oh yeah.
I don't mean atheist being bad. I just mean, you know what I mean. My mother is kind of a god of many names. Like she still has some Judeo-Christian thoughts, but I mean, fairly open-minded. And my sister, she's very spiritual. She was always kind of the driven one back in the day. She was a valedictorian and tennis player and cheerleader, and she went to Smith College. And then she kind of gave everything up, and she went and like raised llamas at a monastery for nuns in North Dakota. And she went to India
Catholic nuns.
Yeah, Catholic nuns. Yeah.
Ooh,
yeah, cool. North Dakota nunnery monastery. So
cool.
She raised big cats and took care of big cats at a goddess sanctuary. She went to India for 9 months. She was a very
I should be interviewing her. Ask her to come on. Ask her to come on. I always do this to my guests. I'm like, hey, can you invite so and so on? But ask her. Yeah, that'd be fun.
I will absolutely ask her. Now she's married to a Brit. She lives in Wales now. So
oh, no way.
Yeah, she's kind of been all over the place. So,
lots of sheep there if she's interested in sheep.
Yeah, right. And so that's kind of my family.
Is she New Age hippie type?
She was into New Age for a while, like goddess stuff, New Age. Yeah, she's been to she's done all that. Stayed at a goddess sanctuary, like done meditation and body work and Reiki. And I mean, she's been to Ramana Maharishi's ashram in India, and she's been under the Bodhi tree with Buddha. And she's waded through the Ganges during religious ceremonies. And
so yes, she's a hippie. She's a New Age hippie. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah.
Did you ever all
the best parts of Ram Dass?
Did you ever identify as New Age, or do you today?
I don't really identify. I appreciate a lot of New Age. I kind of take a little bit from the buffet of spiritual philosophy and religion from around the world.
That's what
I don't really subscribe to any specific belief. I really appreciate New Age spirituality to an extent. I have some Hindu traditions and beliefs that I think are the universal Brahman, not the individual gods, but like the universal Brahman idea. And some of the ideas of the yoga of what yoga is from a breath work, meditative perspective, not necessarily the postures. That's helpful, but the Tao and the balance of the universe and that gray line that we kind of walk in the middle. Some indigenous and pagan beliefs that we aren't in nature, we are nature. I very much resonate that we're all one, like that pantheistic thing that ties us all together, whether we're a tree or a plant or uh, you and me. I tend to read a lot of different um, spiritual philosophies, everything from spiritual philosophies to religions to self help. I kind of read it all and subscribe to. I respect most of it, almost all of it.
How did you meet the wife, and what is she like?
She's very
Watch what you
quiet.
say. Watch what you say.
Yeah, yeah, she's a very quiet person. Uh, she's 8 years older than me. Uh,
Oh.
so
Oh.
uh, I was kind of an old soul, which worked out.
Mhm.
And she's a spiritual person.
Uh-huh.
She's very always been very open to that kind of stuff. And we met.
Does she look witchy?
She doesn't like overtly look witchy, but she has witchy tendencies. So
Okay.
yeah, she's got a very I like witchy Wicca um uh kind of background
Uh,
to her.
but does she dress in flowing, like,
No,
silky stuff? No. Okay.
no, I mean sometimes, but not usually.
Okay.
Um, so we were in the same army unit, and
Oh
we
yeah. Oh yeah.
went to war together, and
Oh. Oh
we
yeah.
got married in Kuwait, wedding certificates in Arabic and all that. So
Ah, that's
yeah,
pretty cool. Wow. So, how many years has it been you've been married now?
20 just hit 20 last year.
Oh, okay. Cool. Very cool. That's exciting. So, forgive me if you already told me, but do you have kids?
No kids. We were kind of always at war in combat
Yeah.
zones, so we never really got to it. We
Ah.
have a dog that was with us in Afghanistan, a working dog that's
Oh
retired. So
yeah. Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Is it highly disciplined?
He used to be.
Just like you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Old war dog, yeah. So that's pretty cool. So, yeah, where do we go from here? I got so many questions, but I guess I want to ask a little bit about the military. Just this is sort of like a short tangent, okay? But
Yeah, sure.
I'm anti unjust war, and every war that I've seen in my lifetime has been unjust, okay?
Sure.
So I'm very cynical and skeptical, and it's just like I don't trust it. I think people with power, they like to keep their power, and that's what war's about, money and power. So I'm very cynical about that. What's your take?
I mostly agree with you. Um, I especially agree with you, especially about Iraq. As far as Afghanistan goes, Afghanistan was poorly handled. I I'm very much a peace loving person myself these days. If I go back to my geopolitical counterintelligence self from back in the day, um, I can say that there were plenty of people in Afghanistan that wanted to kill a lot of other people for a lot of reasons. Some had some validity, probably a lot didn't, and it was it was a place in the world that was completely raw and unrule. There was no rule of anything there. It was just a lawless, and it was kind of anarchy. And in that anarchy, uh, a lot of bad things thrived. And it wasn't just Al Qaeda. It was, I mean, there were so many different groups that were there from East Asia, North Africa, the Horn of Africa, the Balkans and Bosnia. I
Oh yeah.
mean,
Oh yeah.
Chechnya and
Oh,
the Caucasus. So it was,
wow. Mad
Afghanistan was a
Max.
mess.
Mad Max.
Yeah. And so maybe the first year you're like, okay, clean this up and go home or whatever. But like, it's hard once you get past the first couple of days of war, it's a political exercise. I agree with you on that. It becomes not about what they say it's about. It becomes about something completely and entirely different. So I think the reason they said we went in the beginning to Afghanistan had some validity to it. But once we got there, we lost a we were lost because at that point it was just a political exercise and a money machine. I definitely agree with that.
Um, my friend, I want to give a friend shout out to my friend Phil Gonzalez in the live chat and Daniel Drazinovich. And Daniel's making me ask you the question that I always ask anyone anyway, but I may as well ask it now because he's prompting me to ask it. It's about Israel, the situation in Israel. I'm anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, but I'm not anti-Semitic. I love the Jews. I
Yeah.
just don't like the state of Israel, the modern state of Israel. I don't think it's God's ordaining will that they take over there. I know the story with the Old Testament, and God ordained that they take over, but they messed up, right? They missed the
Sure.
boat. Like we're not on the same mission anymore that we used to be. Their Messiah came first of all, but in any case, what do you think of the situation with Gaza and all that?
I don't get too much into politics these days, but I
Yeah,
will answer your question
yeah,
because I used to live in that world of geopolitics.
yeah,
So I will say that I very much agree that I think I'm perfectly fine with the Jewish people and I respect them. I think there's a difference between a Jewish person and a Zionist. And um, I think Israel has frequently overstepped its bound. As I can go back and say, I think I think Arafat should have taken the deal with Clinton back in the day that was made as well. But what I can say is that just because violence is committed by a specific entity, and say Gaza like Hamas, doesn't justify uh, the killing, the blind killing of thousands of people or hundreds of people. And so we have to respect that. We have to respect the human toll on both sides, not just one side, and the balance of that. And that it's impossible for one party to be completely right. It's impossible. It's universally impossible. It's spiritually impossible. It's a logical fallacy. And so if we'd said the Palestinians are 100% right, we would be wrong. If we said the Israelis are 100%, and this goes, I mean, people say, oh, it goes back thousands of years. It does go back thousands of years. It goes back hundreds of years. And, where do you draw the line on how far back it can go on one side or the other where they were the wrong party first? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like you could get into that debate. You could debate this endlessly. Really? The situation's awful. What's happening in Gaza shouldn't be happening. And war doesn't serve any interest except power, money, and politics. So that's probably not a great answer, but that's the best answer I can give you.
It's good. Yeah, it's good. I'm just wondering, I'm Catholic, I'm Christian, so I have I have a worldview that's coherent, and there's a story about salvation history, like creation, the fall from grace, and then the mess that we're in, and then the good news is that we can, say yes to God's grace and go to heaven. So, there's a big story, and the good guys win in the end, and blah 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 blah. It's just a matter of choosing the right team. So we're going to get into your take on salvation and all that sort of stuff, what that means from your spiritual perspective. We're going to get into that. I'm getting a couple of questions from the live chat, so I just want to field it while it's here.
Yeah.
But so I have a story about what's happening, and but I'm just wondering what you think about hunger. Why in 2024 is a child dying of hunger every 7 seconds or whatever it is? That seems ridiculous to me.
Children are dying of hunger because we prioritize things in our lives collectively that go above fixing something like child hunger or global hunger. We prioritize all this stuff in our lives that isn't making the whole world a better place.
So you and I, by our decisions we're making, we are saying that doesn't matter?
No, yes. I think that there's things that we all
or
do.
Is there a committee of elites that are making that decision? Like that's what I'm trying to say. I mean, no,
I don't subscribe to black and white.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that there are oligarchs in this world from a geopolitical perspective. Yes, oligarchs exist, and they control power. But at the same time, we all go throughout our day. There's things that we can all do to lift up the world and make it a better place and choose. Just like you and I having this conversation right now, that's a choice you and I are making. And so if more people made a choice to have this conversation and answer that question about what happened to child hunger, then it would be a bigger issue and people be more aware of it and more things could get done about it. There's nothing that I can individually do to go stop child hunger today, except all I can do is sit here and talk to you about it. That's something I can do. And now hopefully maybe one more person's aware of it or two more people are aware of it. That's a good thing. So it's both
of my subscribers are now aware of it. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm kidding. I'm just making fun of myself for having a small viewership. But anyway, go ahead. You were giving a good speech there.
No, I think there are things. I think we have to take care of ourselves and lift up the world around us, and that's all we can do to change the world. Like, live the best life we can for ourselves, love ourselves first. If you love yourself first, then suddenly you're lifting up yourself, you're lifting up the whole world around you, and making the whole world a better place.
Yeah, I think it does start with the individual making choices and not being crushed by the burden of responsibility, right? That's another angle on
Yeah.
it. Like, I mean, some people feel the guilt and they feel the shame and all that sort of thing. Um, you know, I'm just curious, are we allowed to talk about conspiracy theories like 9/11, those old ones? Like,
Yeah,
that's a long time ago, right?
I'll talk about
Will
conspiracy theories.
YouTube kick me off for talking about it? But anyway, in any case, we'll see what happens. But I don't believe the mainstream narrative, the official story. I've read the NIST reports; it's garbage. You know, I just don't buy it. Okay, I just do not buy the official story for 9/11. But you have more skin in the game, so I'm just wondering: did you ever buy it? Do you still buy it today, or did you look at some alternative theories about what might have happened there?
I think 9/11 happened mostly the way that it has been
Okay,
said to happen. I don't think it's exact. Nothing's ever exactly the way it's written.
of course.
So I think Al Qaeda and the global Mujahideen network, the global network that supported Al Qaeda, um, was very intact at the time. I think they got lucky. I think that if 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 there's a conspiracy theory that is to be put forth, the only one that I would probably subscribe to is that the U.S. might have known potentially it was going to happen and didn't do enough or anything to stop it. Because conspiracies are really of that magnitude are so difficult to pull off if you're inside the internal machines of the military industrial complex. It's this very feudal system. It's this bifurcated. It's like no one's running the whole machine. There's fiefdoms, and it would be very difficult for a cabal to exert that kind of influence over the entire machine to make it happen, other than maybe choosing nothing, doing nothing, or apathy and allowing something to happen, which is not what I'm saying has happened. But I'm saying if people want to subscribe to a conspiracy theory, that's probably the only one that I can think of. But like having been in the intelligence community, I was in a skiff. I was in a top secret facility the day that the towers came down.
Oh yeah.
On shift, I was working in a counterterrorism office in Fort Gordon, Georgia, and so I was there, and I had a front row seat to the whole situation. And just because I have a top secret security clearance doesn't mean I have need to know or access at that level at all, because there's levels of need to know. But everything and there were some things that happened that day where I can look back and be like, well, that's strange, and that's strange. And I don't, I think that there's a good chance, personally, this is my personal opinion, that Flight 93 could have been downed, on purpose because it was a threat. That maybe it didn't, the whole like, let's go, crash the plane didn't happen, maybe it was shot down. Things like that. So what I'm saying is I don't subscribe to the whole steel beams can't melt because of jet fuel and all that. I think 9/11 happened. I think that it was primarily orchestrated by Al Qaeda, and the global network that supported them. And I think Al Qaeda also got a bit lucky, and I think our intelligence community. There's also that aspect of our intelligence community is really, really good at what it does, and also makes huge mistakes that don't seem like they should make or could make.
What's your do you believe the official report, the official explanation for building 7 coming down? Do you believe that?
I don't have an opinion on that because I don't know enough about it.
You don't find it weird? Or you just haven't looked into it? You haven't looked into it?
I haven't studied the whole. I haven't studied what happened on 9/11 in detail. I mean, I know a lot about what happened around 9/11, but I don't know enough about Tower 7.
Okay, maybe something to look into. Anyway, we won't dwell on this. I thought just because you have that background, I thought it might be interesting. So I do want to get into the spiritual stuff. I don't want to dwell on all this political stuff, but I do have one more political question. It's, my suspicion is that, there's a lot of theater going on. Like, for example, in the US, they have these elections every 4 years, and there's so much just entertainment value to that whole process. It's so
Yeah.
ongoing
Amen.
and constant. And you got,
Yeah.
Trump and Biden, you got Republicans and Democrats, and it's such an effective distraction that I tend to think that maybe it's a distraction. You know what I mean? Because it's so like, I used to watch The Young and the Restless. It's like one of the longest running daytime dramas or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like I get the same feeling from it. It's just like there's a
I,
it's orchestrated. It's just like it's designed to entertain, and that's it. And there's probably a uniparty, and they're just like laughing behind our back. They're just laughing at us. This is just, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but this is kind of my suspicion. It's like, it's just a joke. People that have power are going to keep the power, and they're going to give us the illusion that there's choice and that your vote matters and these sorts of things. So I don't buy this completely, what I'm telling you, but it's just sort of a caricature of what I suspect might be happening. What do you think?
I largely agree that it's theater. I think that regardless of who is in charge, um, certain things are going to happen no matter what. That things are controlled by people who have power and have money. That's how it's always been, going way back. I mean, way past way before America. And I think America gets a lot of attention because it's the most powerful country in the world, so it's always in the spotlight. And I I think that there's some great things about what the United States has done throughout time, and like democracy and all that. There's a tons of evil and dark stuff that it's done. I've been a part of some of that stuff. I was in that military industrial complex. I take responsibility for that myself. Um, but politically, yes, it is theater. Regardless of who's in, it's the same system. We have some degree of control as citizens. We probably don't have as much as we think, just from a purely voting perspective. I still think we have a great voice in America because we still have a ton of freedom. I mean, there's still a ton of ability to say what we want, act how we want, do what we want. And I think there's something to that. I think we have to say there's something to having that ability to have that freedom of movement, freedom of expression, and whatnot. And we can get up and say whatever we want, almost whenever we want, wherever we want. I appreciate that. So, but I think that the best thing we can do, and this is in my opinion, if I'm talking to you or I'm talking to my neighbor and we disagree on politics or policy or whatever, we probably agree on 90% of stuff. We want to have healthy children and a happy community and a secure life and all that stuff. And so if we agree on 90%, why get so wrapped around the axle about that 10% that mass media and everyone wants us to get so upset about?
Yeah, so we can be divided.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
it's just
Divide and conquer,
obvious.
right?
Yeah, it's just obvious. For me, it's a spiritual thing. It's like Satan wants to divide us, and he wants our precious souls for hell, and God wants to unite us, and he wants our precious souls for heaven. So, but I want to talk about your unique and unorthodox views. And when I say unorthodox, I just mean non-Catholic. So,
Yeah.
like, what are some of the views that you have? Do you believe in reincarnation and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I believe that basically people should believe what they want. That's my first belief. And from a personal side, under that umbrella of kind of universalism, omnism, I believe that personally, I do believe in reincarnation. That whole idea of death, rebirth, or death, life, rebirth, and then that whole cycle. I think that there's something to that. Um, I do believe we're all connected. I have kind of pantheistic idea of that, of the world from that perspective. So yeah, I definitely believe in kind of reincarnation.
What's the end game? Because from a Christian point of view, you had um, God who created creation, and creation has a beginning, a distinct beginning, and a distinct end, and everything in between is kind of a hot mess since the fall. But it's a story of redemption. It's called salvation history. So,
Sure.
what's your story? What's your big picture story?
From a picture of redemption and a perspective of salvation, I think within that cycle of death, rebirth, life, and then you keep repeating it. I think the idea of that's called samsara, that cycle that you live in Hinduism, and eventually that cycle of samsara as you live these lifetimes, eventually you become enlightened. And once you become enlightened and know the oneness of the universe, then you're not living that cycle anymore. You've achieved enlightenment. Um, and and become one with the Brahman of the universe, the universal whole. I don't see that a whole lot different from like mystical Christianity and the Christ consciousness. I see a lot of similarities to that personally. Um,
Well,
if you
sorry to cut you off, but in the East, there's a big difference because, there's monism, there's only one thing, the one mind of Buddha or whatever you want to call it, that reality, and then the illusion that we live here below, the illusion of separateness and distinctness and the other, and, that's all illusion. And that the reality is, it's just God, it's just the bliss of God in heaven, that's all there is. So, I'm not saying that that's sort of, I'm oversimplifying a little bit because people have so many convoluted ideas. You talked about Hinduism before. I mean, that's very convoluted, right? But the higher ups, the more intellectual Hindus, they basically have this sort of monistic idea at
yeah.
front and center, and they understand, but for the people, it's sort of dumbed down and made into a distraction and an entertainment. Again, it's sort of like this, this very interesting pantheon of gods and whole systems of superstition and stuff like that. And of course, you could point at the Catholics and say we have something similar, and there are a lot of similarities.
Right.
There are a lot of similarities, and people are superstitious in the Catholic Church. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Sure.
But it's forbidden. We're not supposed to be, but we are. Like,
Right.
I have my superstitions, and I try not to indulge that appetite. But I'm a human. So
Sure.
we cling to what's comfortable and what's comforting and these sorts of things. So I'm not looking down my nose at the Hindus, at all, not at all.
I
But
got you.
when it comes to the East versus the West, or the sort of monism versus monotheism, they're very, very big differences, because I'm going to retain my individuality. I'm going to be David up in heaven. I mean, I'll probably get a new name there, but I'll still be David, and you'll be John. So if God willing, you make it, and I hope you do, and I have to assume that you will, because I'm forbidden to condemn you to hell. So that's the big difference, is identity. My friend Daniel's asking, what is the definition of a person? So this ties in with my notion that, we in our Christian worldview, we have this notion that we are actual created creatures that will remain separate from God, but we're going to enter into the life of God. But if you're in the New Age or the Gnostic or the Eastern way of looking at things, it's really monism, where there's just the one reality of God, and you're going to merge into that, like a drop going into the ocean, and merge with that, to oversimplify once again. So what's your definition of a person?
It's very much that we're definitely spiritual beings living a human existence. I'll put that cliche out there and say that resonates with me. Some cliches exist for a reason. It's an easy way to it's an easy way to describe it.
Yeah.
And for me, like, from a theological perspective, I mean, I'm not an expert in philosophy, I'm an expert in theology, but like, what I can say is, like, I've read something like from, like, is it Miguel de Molinos or Michael de Molinos, the Catholic mystic that was back in the 1600s, and he wrote the Spiritual Guide, right? And
Okay.
it was called the Spiritual Guide. He was a Catholic mystic. It was signed off, his book when he wrote it. It was signed off on by the Jesuits, and it was signed off on by people tied directly to the Pope. And he was big time in Rome, had hung out with all the papacy and the cardinals and the bishops and everything. And it was cool for a couple of years, and then people started to question things out. The lay people started to question things, and then suddenly he found himself in Inquisition jail. And I've read the Spiritual Guide, and what he wrote in that is very much what you were just talking about from an Eastern perspective. And I think that there were some perspectives within the Christian and Protestant, the Catholic and Protestant schools of thought, that were mystical, going back to the idea of where Christ started and stopped, and where God started and stopped. And I think some of these Christian mystics were quieted by not by God. I think they were quieted by church and man. So I think that that's how I can say we're speaking very similar languages.
Yeah, I'm just looking it up. It's too bad I can't get it from my Kindle. I have to get it in paperback. but I'm just looking it up. It says it's the most canceled book, the most burned book ever, or something like that. So it sounds interesting.
Yeah.
He has some other books listed here. I'll have to look into it. But for you, it really resonates, and it's something you think that I would find interesting as an Orthodox Catholic.
Yeah, I think you would be interested in it for sure.
Cool. He
I think it's an
emphasizes the.
important part. I think it's an important part of history of the Catholic Church too.
Yeah. Okay. Does the book actually talk a little bit about the controversy and the his imprisonment and all that?
The introduction that I read, yeah, it was
Okay.
a Western spiritual classic, and the guy that did the intro he's a famous um academic. Like he's not a Catholic himself. He's just an academic. Uh,
Okay.
fairly straight laced academic actually. That did the intro
Okay.
that I read. The introduction was quite good.
Cool. That's pretty cool. Well, I just bought it, so I'm gonna like at this point, it's like my reading list is so bloated and constipated that it's just like what one more book won't hurt. Just throw it in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's just
I
like
get that.
where do I begin? Like where do I go next? Right now, I'm reading some fiction that's like it's like I'm taking a break from nonfiction and I'm reading this Christian fantasy stuff that some Satanist friend of mine had recommended that I read. And it's fun. It's cute. It's not really edifying or whatever. It's just mildly entertaining, but I got to get back to the spiritual reading eventually. But what's your reading list like these days?
I try to rotate where I'll go from like an Abrahamic faith and read on that, whether it's Islam or Christianity or Judaism, and I'll do a Hindu, and I'll read something about Tao or Buddhism, and I'll read a self-help book, and I try to read a couple of philosophy books in that same rotation, um, from all the way back to Socrates on from Western philosophy on, and
That's
try to
cool.
read some Western philosophy in there as well.
That's fun. I forgot to ask you about your name, John Lawyer. It sounds like it's a funny name. What's the
Yeah,
story there? What's your ethnic background?
I people used to say in our family that we were Black Dutch, which is kind of like mutts, but a mixture of just a bunch of different stuff. I did one of the DNA things,
Ah,
and mostly almost all British, Irish, and a little bit of Scandinavian,
ah,
but pretty much all British Isles.
oh. Oh, you're very dark features though.
Yeah, I was surprised.
I
I
thought
was
you're
really
Mexican.
surprised.
You got those dark
Yeah,
features. That's cool. Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
so I don't know if you could tell by looking at me, but it's all British Isles, like a little bit of Scandinavian, a little bit of German, but mostly Irish, Scottish,
yeah.
English, and
We're
Welsh.
very similar.
But that's cool. So yeah, when it comes to spirituality and the main question really, I think I forget which philosopher said it, but the only question really is why don't you kill yourself? Like that gets to the heart of the matter pretty quickly. Like why not just kill yourself? Because I don't know about you, but I find this life tedious and it's full of pain and disappointment, and I'm not promoting suicide. I'm against it. Like Canada's promoting it and I'm against that promotion. Okay, I'm firmly against it, but the philosophical question is what is the point? Why am I here? What am I doing? And can I opt out? Like what I mean. And once again, I'm not promoting suicide at all. It's in my family. There's suicide in my family and I'm against it. It's a demonic. But as a philosophical question, it gets to the heart of the matter. What is the point? Who am I? What am I? And what is my source? And I know in the New Age, the word source is very loaded, but just answer the question, like, what's going on? Why are you here? What's the purpose? And what happens after death for you?
I think that we each have a unique higher purpose in this life, in this existence that we have. I think it could change by each person, and I think it can change during our lives what our higher purpose is. Our dharma from a Hindu perspective. Um,
Oh, yeah, someone asked you to define the word dharma. I just said good works, but what do you say?
for me, like from a when higher, it means higher purpose to me. Like,
Okay.
what are we living our higher purpose? Is kind of how I
Okay.
use it. It's not an exact
It's
translation.
like a duty, an obligation, purpose.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Are you living like your soul's desire, your soul's like need?
Okay.
Um, And so do we know if I feel that if we know what our higher purpose or dharma is, I feel like if if we know it, if we don't know it, let's find it. Let's find out what it is. And then if you do know it, is it aligned with your life? Are you living it in your day-to-day life and lifestyle with at your home? Are you living it at work? Are you are you living who you are? I think if we can explore that, then that comes to a more joyful existence, a more peaceful, calm existence that we found, okay, here's what I was meant to do in the world, in the universe, in my life. Now I'm going to do it every day. And that's going to bring me more in line, mind, body, and soul. And I'm going to be, like I said, a more peaceful, calm person.
One of the analogies, thank you for that anyway, but one of the analogies I like to use when talking to non-monotheists, and it's safe to say you're a non-monotheist, right? You're not a monotheist, right?
No, I'm more of a pantheist than a monotheist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the analogies I like to use, sort of to justify the attitude that monotheists have, which can be annoying to the non-monotheist, is the analogy of the Titanic. It's like, it wasn't supposed to sink, and people bought the ticket with the brochure that said it's not going to sink, and they didn't even put enough life rafts on it because it's not going to sink. And when it hit the iceberg, and the captain told the stewards to go around and tell everyone that it's sinking, people didn't believe. Like a lot of people didn't believe, and so the band continued playing allegedly, and people were drinking and dancing and whatever. But some concerned citizens or whatever were going around saying, "Well, let's make our way calmly to the life rafts." And so in my analogy, it's like the monotheist religions believe in heaven and hell, and that there's a judgment upon death, and so there's a sense of urgency. It's like, hey, no, it's not just fun time. It's not like you get to just trial and error, try this life, and then you'll come back and have another go next time, so don't worry about it. And I'm exaggerating a little bit. I know that you do worry. You do worry about the next life. You do worry about it. You want to be good for goodness sake and all these sorts of things. It's not my first time talking with someone that believes these sorts of things. But my basic point with my analogy is that there's a sense of urgency that we have that you don't have. So how do you respond to that?
I think that the difference between monotheist and pantheist is very thin, in my opinion. I mean, a monotheist believes in a single God. A pantheist essentially believes in a single God. I don't see God as this sentient, humanoid, anthropomorphous size thing. It's God just is. God is what he is, or she is, or it is. You know what I mean? Like, it just is. I said he there. I did it. I just did it talking back to you about, like, we put this human idea of what God is into what we think God is. So I think from a pantheistic point of view, the oneness of everything, like I said, for me, I think that I have the same urgency to be at peace with the universe as a Christian does, or a Muslim, or a Jew. In my opinion, I think that the only issue I've ever had with, like, any religion, not just Christianity, but any religion, is the dogma, and the amount of times that humans have touched how many times have humans touched the how many times have humans touched the message, the core message of the faith? And I think that is the essence of the question of religion, philosophy, spirituality. How many times has man touched the idea of what faith is? And I think the answer is, over hundreds of years, it's a lot.
Yeah. But what is the worst case scenario? Because, as I keep reminding you, we have an eternal hell you can't get out, once you're in there. And an eternal heaven, which is lovely. But we want to choose the latter and avoid the former. But for you, what's the worst case scenario? Once all the dust settles and everything's, whatever, you've done all your, lives that you're going to do and all that. So at the very end, like, what's the worst case scenario? and what's the best case scenario? And is there any difference between the worst case scenario and the best case scenario?
Uh, that's a good question. I think there's an aspect of I don't know. Uh, I mean, I've seen. I mean, when I had my spiritual awakening, my moment of clarity, I had this great understanding. I still feel like I have it. I feel very at peace with everything. Nothing really bothers me as far as that goes. Um, I even studying. I mean, you've brought up hell a few times,
Yeah.
but I think the Bible's a little tenuous on exactly what heaven and hell is like. Uh, and so I've always had issues with that. With that idea of hell and like where is it in the Bible that says hell exists exactly and exactly what it is and who's going to go there and who's not and um so I mean I've always had issues with that
Yeah,
kind
we
of.
all have issues with hell. We all have issues with hell. That's for sure. You know, no one likes it. No one likes it. Even those who are there don't like it. Okay, but it's just reality that karma. It's just karma. It's just karma. Okay, so you abuse your free will and there are consequences. That's it. That's all there is to it. Like that's all there is to it. So I mean, I'm just encouraging you to think a little bit more. Not now, but in your spare time about
Sure.
hell, the eternity of hell, and from your own perspective, not from the Bible. Why would you go to the Bible? Just from your own perspective, using the lights that you have.
Yeah, but I don't think hell exists. I don't believe hell exists.
I know, but you believe in karma. You believe that your actions have consequences. You believe the choices you make have consequences. So that's all I'm asking you to think about, because you can't just have everyone arrive at the same happy place. That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense.
To be fair though, I've never said that I think that the world is just a happy place.
Right.
I
Right.
very much said I believe in the light and the dark. I think that we're the gray that walks the middle. I've said that. I
Uh,
don't
uh.
I don't I don't believe that everything is kumbaya. I don't believe
So
that at
my
all.
question is, do you, because you're going to reincarnate according to you, do you remain always gray, or do you have a chance to go to the light or to the dark? When the dust settles and you've lived all your lives, are you going to be gray, or are you going to be on the black or the white? Like that's what I'm asking you. Are you going to remain gray always?
I think the universe is the balance. To me, the universe is the balance.
Okay.
It is the line. It is the gray.
Okay. 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 Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all there
I
is
fully
gray. That's all there is gray. That's the ultimate
no,
reality.
I
That's the ultimate
no,
reality.
I believe there's light and dark. I believe
Okay.
the universal constant, the universal like absolute through that
Average.
is the balance.
Okay. 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 So yeah, I mean, it's just the idea that I'm living a very dangerous life. It's an adventure, and the stakes are high. It sounds to me like there's absolutely nothing for you to worry about, because you're going to be in the gray zone in a universe that is eternal and constantly balanced. There's no danger. There's no drama. There's no risk. Right? What's the
No, but
risk?
I'm saying there is light and dark.
Right. But
I'm
it's
saying that there's all this stuff that happens on either side. I'm saying at the end of the day, the universe comes back to the middle.
right.
Like just like mathematics does, or just like nature does. There's always balance in nature. There's this happens and this happens. There's cause and effect. But to me, there's still that balance in the middle that the universe still comes back to the middle. That's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's the idea.
Yeah. But for you as an individual that will, according to your belief system, will live not only this life but future lives, and have already lived presumably past lives, um, you're going to always be in the same universe, the universe which is, as you say, balanced. There's light and there's darkness, and you're just walking that gray zone. Um, so can you imagine? I've asked Hindus about this. I don't get a very straight answer, but I've asked them, and I press them on it, and just like I'm pressing you, like, is there any way that someone could go down the dark path and get stuck in a very dark rut and not be able eventually to climb their way back toward the light? And some of my Hindu friends have said, yes, that is possible. But it's not, there's no firm commitment. The basic answer is, I don't know. Like, that's the basic answer I get. So not expecting anything more from you, but it's like, to me, it's very, very important. It's very important. Like, is it possible to mess up and to be stuck in a place that's very dark? Is that possible? Or can you always just find your way back because the universe just keeps going and you're going to have all the time you need to come back toward the light. What do you think?
I would say that I don't know is a pretty fair answer there, because I don't know. But what I can say is I can ask this question too, though.
Yeah.
Like, from a Judeo-Christian perspective, you hear all the time growing up as kids, like, oh, that person's an old soul, or that so-and-so is an old soul. Where did that come from?
Mature, someone
I mean,
mature beyond their years.
That's baked into like the way that parents talk to children, communities talk about people. Oh, that person's an old soul. Like, where does that come from? Where does that come from?
A certain disposition, a certain set of characteristics. Like I like to have I've always been like this. I like to be in my pajamas by the fire with a cup of tea.
That person's lived multiple lifetimes. That's the connotation.
That's never been my connotation, but some people might sort of use that as a colorful way of illustrating it. But I mean, I should let you know, by the way, that I've interviewed many people, and I've interviewed Christians, ostensible Christians who believe in reincarnation. So it's like, people are human, and they're gonna, like I said earlier in this, like there are superstitious Christians, and there are Christians who believe in all kinds of stuff. I'm
not judging anybody.
Yeah. I'm just saying that if you're going to be Christian, we're not supposed to be superstitious. We're not supposed to believe in reincarnation. But I've met people that are and that do. So yeah, it's like it's like I've met vegetarians who eat meat. It's just that's just the way we are. Like we're hypocrites. So to me, it's not about, hey, can you find someone who's not living up to their own standards. To me, the question is, what is ultimate reality, and do our actions have consequences? Yes or no? Like, if they don't,
I believe our actions have I believe in karma. I mean, my favorite Bible verse growing up, because everybody's like, what's your favorite Bible verse when you're growing up, Southern Baptist or in a church? Like, my favorite Bible verse was Hosea 8:7, and it's, for they have sown the wind and they shall reap the whirlwind. That's karma. That is karma. And that was my favorite Bible verse as a child. I believe in karma. I believe that you reap what you sow. I've always believed that, even before I was on a spiritual path.
I hope you don't feel like I'm like coming down heavy on you, but it's just the way the conversation's going or whatever. And I've had this conversation so many times, it never goes anywhere, but it's just fun. No, it's just fun.
I don't feel like you're coming down heavy at all. I'm just trying to give you my perspective, which is all I can do. Yeah.
It's just very, 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 very important to me that we have a basis for morality, because if you can literally do whatever you want, and if so, like just for example, if someone came to you, if you had a niece or a nephew that came to you and said, hey, uncle, I'm thinking of taking the dark path, is it possible I could go down this dark path and get stuck in somewhere really horrible and not be able to claw my way back? And you say, I don't know. I don't think that's good parenting. You know what I mean? That's not good parenting.
I mean,
that's not good parenting.
I would be able to have a pretty informed conversation with my nieces if they came to me and asked me that.
You gotta have some principles. Like you gotta be able to say, like, don't go down the dark path. Don't go down the dark path. How can you tell them not to? What would you say to them to tell them not to go down the dark path? Like, I'm just curious. I don't think you have a good reason to not encourage them to go down the dark path. Like, I mean, what is it about your worldview where you would say, no, my worldview teaches me that we cannot go down the dark path? Oh yeah, where what's the source for that? Like, I just showed you, flashed you my book of dogmas. Like, I could show you 100 different dogmas that make it very clear, not least of which is the dogma of the eternal hell. But what can you point to? What can you point to?
I think people should know what their values are and beliefs individually. My biggest guiding light, my biggest value that I live is loving kindness. And I don't always meet that value. I don't always get there, but I try. And so if my nieces came to me and talked about darkness, I would teach them about loving kindness and what it means in the universe, in the context that I understand the universe. And so I would tell them, I could be wrong. You can't trust that I'm right. Go find your own path. Here's my words of wisdom that I've learned through knowledge personified through experience, which becomes wisdom. And here's what I'll impart to you. And you go figure it out yourself. And good luck. you know, but I would send them out with the value of loving kindness, with the value of creativity and curiosity, and to like I said, to love themselves first, to and lift themselves up, and in doing so, they'll lift up the whole world around them just naturally. And that's the greatest gift that they could offer the world. That's what I would tell them.
If someone, I believe you, but if someone came to you and said, "Look, I found a way," let's say it's just a stranger you meet in the desert, or whatever, and you're having a drink together, and he tells you a story, and he's like, "I've figured it out. I know how to maximize my pleasure at everyone else's expense," and it involves torture and rape and everything else and murder, and I love it, and I'm the pillar of the community. Everyone thinks I'm squeaky clean, and I've got all the money, and I've got my beautiful wife and 1,000 women on the side, and whatever. So he's living the dream. Like, according to him, he's living the dream because he has all the power, the money, and the women, and the pleasure. So what do you say to him that, like, that would chastise him from the wisdom of your worldview, other than just go for it? Just go for it.
No,
Enjoy.
I wouldn't chastise him. I wouldn't say anything to him. I'd say, good luck, man. Like, you go do your thing, because I've detached myself mostly. It's a work in progress, but I've detached myself from judgment of myself. I've detached myself from judgment of others, which I believe is like super in line with Jesus Christ. Like, if I look at the red letters of the New Testament and I live the teachings of Jesus Christ, that's pretty close to how I live. Like, I don't want to judge. I want to practice my own faith personally. I like, letting go of judgment's been the most freeing thing that I have ever done. Because, and don't get me wrong, I still judge people. I still judge myself, but I work to not do that. And the work to not do that has been this massively freeing thing to me, like, where it's lifted all this weight off of me. And that's I think one of the biggest lessons of the New Testament is that idea of non-judgment. I don't care what that guy does,
unless it involves your nieces.
Oops. No.
Oops.
We live in a society and a community, though. I mean, it's not like we live in anarchy. That assumes that we live in a society and a community of anarchy, which we don't. So, like, philosophically, that's not correct, because we live in a society and a community with norms that are set out to protect our society and our community. I'm not an anarchist. And I think what you're saying is that I am, and I'm not that. And so I live within the norms of a society and a community because I choose to live in that, and they all do as well. So I don't think you can say that's what would happen to my nieces. I don't think that's fair, because I live in a society. I live in a community. So I don't think that's fair at all to say. I don't agree with that.
Yeah, but if you meet this guy and he's telling you all the tricks he has up his sleeve and how well it's working for him, you can't just say, "Well, go on your way, have a nice time," because it might actually be the case that he's victimizing people you care about. Like, and this is not a joke. This is not a hypothetical. This is reality. There are bad people doing bad things, and you can say go on your merry way and have a good time. But if you figured out later that your family members were involved, you'd have a different attitude, right?
I didn't say I wouldn't tell the community what I heard.
Okay.
I didn't say that. Like, okay. I think we can have a philosophical discussion, and we can talk about judgment and non-judgment. Yeah. But like I said, we're humans. You've talked about I'm human.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about, non-judgment, Jesus said, "Don't ever judge. Ever. Don't ever judge." And so I'm not saying anything different than what Jesus said. But we choose to live in a society and a community. We make those choices. I can tell the guy, "Go do your thing." I could go tell someone else in the community, "Watch out for that guy."
Yeah.
I think if we're talking about a philosophical conversation or a theological conversation, there's that the philosophy and that theology. But at the end of the day, we live in a society, we live in a community, and then we make choices about how we decide to where we put that line that we drew for ourselves. So we all make those compromises because we're human. And I think anyone that says they don't make those compromises is not being genuine with themselves.
Another way to think about it is, and I think you're sort of missing the point of my thought experiment. The point of my thought experiment is exploration of the dark side. For, like, we have goodness for goodness sake, but we also have darkness for darkness' sake. So I mean, there's that Epicurean idea that, well, instead of filling your face with chocolate cake because you like chocolate cake, you're going to find out pretty fast that you don't like chocolate cake that much, because everything has to be in moderation and its proper place and time, and so on and so forth, in order to have the fullness of satisfaction and pleasure, and so on and so forth. So yeah, there's a more sophisticated way to derive pleasure from this life. And you could point to the brutes that haven't figured that out yet and sort of feel sorry for them. And you could educate them, right? But ultimately, the Epicurean hedonist is still trying to maximize his pleasure. It's still quite different from the monotheistic ideal. So when it comes to you, just you, trying to get the most that you can out of life, what are the principles that guide you other than loving kindness? I mean, loving kindness is going to require sacrifice, and that's going to require suffering, So what are the principles that guide you in terms of maximizing your pleasure? Or is pleasure not what it's about? Because, if you want to exercise loving kindness, it's not going to be the most pleasurable lifestyle, right? It's like, just you like comparing yourself with Jesus. Well, look at how his love worked out.
Hold on a second. Like, I wasn't comparing myself to Jesus. I'm saying that Jesus said something that I'm also saying.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
I'm not comparing myself to Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Well, you were, but I mean, it's like you're trying to say like I'm doing what he's doing and I'm saying what he's saying or whatever. I'm not saying this to berate you. I'm just saying like that's the example that you've used, probably because you're talking to a Christian. But and that's no problem. I don't take offense with that. But when it comes to living a life like Christ lived, a life of love, it's self-sacrifice, and it's painful. Right? It's very, very, very painful. So maybe that's what you are comfortable with, or what I'm trying to get at here with this particular thought experiment is, when you're trying to get the most out of life, do you anticipate a lot of self-sacrifice and suffering?
I think that sometimes when you are trying to get something out of life, you're going to see a lot of self-sacrifice and suffering. I've seen suffering. I've suffered myself. I've admitted that I've been a party to darkness and evil. With the U.S. military industrial complex, and I was stuck in the swamp of sadness for years, wandering the desert. Familiar themes in religion across multiple religions. I think that one reason you see spiritual or religious people that talk in churches or synagogues or temples or mausoleums or whatever, a lot of times you see the people that are good teachers are people who've seen great darkness, who looked into the abyss. And it provides great context to that light, right? And I can believe that I'm the gray balance that walks the middle, but I have a choice whether I see that light and look at that light, or focus on the darkness and be obsessed with the darkness. I would rather look at the light. I can be the balance and try to walk the balance and know that I'm the universal balance, but still want to look at the light as I'm walking. And so I believe that I've gone through suffering. I've gone through pain. I've been stuck in that swamp. I've wandered that desert. And now I really, truly want to help people help themselves. I don't want to help them. I want them to help themselves and show them a way that they can do something. And if it's for them, great. If it's not, that's okay too. So I believe I'm living a life that is not fully sacrificial, because I still have selfish interests. I'm still human, right? So we're still living this human existence. It's okay. But I'm doing my best to give back to the world. I've taken from the world. I've done bad things. I've been a party to bad things, and I want to give back to the world. And so I believe I am being selfless and in service of others, and I'm imperfect at it, but I'm doing my best to give back.
That's cool. Sure. That's cool. One last little question, another little awkward one, but it's about Jesus when he said, "If you love me, keep my commandments." What do you think he meant by that? And how does it apply to you? Not to push this thing where you're comparing yourself with Christ, but how would you take that upon yourself to say, well, to love is to obey? What does that look like in your worldview?
I think Jesus is saying, when he said that, live like I live, like provide this example that I've provided, like be the person that I am, because I'm the perfect manifestation of God or whatever. So be like me, like live like this. I'm the example. Walk this path. So I my answer to that would say, yeah, absolutely, man. Like that's it. I I see very little difference between what Jesus is teaching or what the Buddha taught. That, for me, that's just my personal opinion on it. I think it's so similar. And so I think it's just about living a good life, being the best that you can, not judging others, not doing all these things that Jesus told us that we shouldn't do. And we're not going to achieve that. Jesus told us we wouldn't.
Yeah.
You're going to try to do this, but you're not going to be able to do it. So we do the best that we can. And it's just like that concept of me tossing a rock at my neighbor's hubcap is as bad as someone murdering someone. That's hard to resolve in our human brain. But that's what we were taught. That's what the book says, you know. So we just have to do the best we can within ourselves and in the context of living in this really imperfect, tough world that we live in. But there's also so much beauty and light in this world. I have great faith and hope in humanity. I think we're going to be okay. And so I really want that to come out. I really want that to be something that people take away from me, because that's my genuine belief.
Thank you for that. So one final thought is when Jesus said that the two great commandments, because we have 10 commandments, so they can be broken down into various different groups. And he broke it down into two: love of God, like complete love of God. And then the second one is like it's to love your neighbor as yourself. So here we have three things. We have God, neighbor, and self. So we're supposed to love God, we're supposed to love neighbor, we're supposed to love self. So talk about that Christian teaching from your non-Christian perspective.
I love that question. It's a great question. The other day, a few weeks ago, our community we made a YouTube video about the golden rule across time and different religions and different philosophies. And so I actually dove into this. And if you look back through Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, there's an idea, and usually a verse that they can cite. Sometimes it's oral tradition that basically says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Right. And that's this truly beautiful thing. And Jesus came from the Jews, and right. And if you look, even if you go to a Jewish rabbi now, or someone who studies the Torah, the Talmud, and they're a Jewish theologian, they will tell you that the one absolute thing that you could, the lowest common denominator of everything is the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So I think it's the best thing. I think it's the most beautiful thing. I love it. I think it's a great question.
Excellent. So what is this community that you belong to? And you should take this opportunity, because we're going to wrap up, to sort of plug any project, or do you have books in the works, or what's going on?
No book at this time. We have a community that is an authentic, meaningful place online and digital world where people can kind of share their journeys with one another. It's
is that kishar.org?
Yeah, kishar.org.
I linked that. I linked that
Yeah.
in the show notes. So
okay.
What's the word Kishar mean?
It's the Sumerian goddess of Mother Earth, like Gaia. Also represents the line on the horizon, which we think kind of encompasses that journey we're all on. And it's about sharing one another, whether you're Christian or Hindu or Buddhist, it doesn't matter. We can come and have a conversation and ask questions to each other, and we don't have to change their minds. Maybe we help inform each other's practices, and we have this open-minded conversation, just like you and I are having right now.
That's cool. That's pretty cool. So hold on. You do video? Is it you that make videos for this, or do other people contribute videos?
We also have a YouTube channel that's part of this whole thing, and I work on it. My wife works on it, and a good friend of ours that we met in Afghanistan, she's from Bosnia. She's in the Balkans. She also helps us.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So is it mainly a community for community's sake, or is there a project in mind, like you're going to eventually do something more? Or like, I'm not saying that you do need to do more than to have a community, but is there like a long-term goal or medium-term goals for that community?
The goal is for people to come in and help each other find their way and have that alignment of mind, body, and soul. And we very much believe in that intersection between our spiritual path, and we all occupy this real world where we have to sleep right, eat right, and wellness, and how that all fits in together so that we can just be, the best humans that we can be, as we're all kind of hanging out together. So it's about that intersection of spirituality, the real world, and how we all kind of can make it work.
Very cool. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to me, and I hope it didn't offend you with anything I said.
No, no, no. I appreciate a good conversation.
Campaigning for hell over here.
No, I appreciate it. Like I want everyone out there to hopefully know I absolutely respect you and what you're doing. I love your show. I think it's a good it's good to have people on and have different viewpoints. This is what we should be doing.
Did you check out any of my guests that I've had on?
Yeah, I have. I've watched. I was watching one of your episodes. I watched a couple of different of your episodes yesterday.
Can you talk about some of the guests you met?
I don't remember the guy's name. He grew up Baptist, and then he was in a kind of a Unitarian type, multi-denominational. And then he ended up kind of going back to this devout kind of Protestant. Man, I forget his name. I'm bad with names.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. But basically, basically a Christian guy.
Yeah.
Well, because I've had all kinds of, as you know, I've had all kinds of guests. So there's lots to discover. If you're into, the New Age thing, just to sort of use a quick and dirty handle on it, I've got a lot of interesting guests that talk about that angle, and I've had a few like straight up Hindus. Yeah.
And your friend who was an artist, you hadn't talked to in a long time. You knew him years ago.
Oh, was that audio only?
Yeah, it was audio only.
Oh, it might have been Chris, or it might have been the other guy who was living in Africa at the time. I can't remember his name. But you listened to that one recently?
Yeah, you listened to it last night.
Do you remember any of the topics at all? Because that'll remind me of who it was.
He had recently lost a friend to a drug overdose, and he. You guys knew each other way back when.
Okay, that's my friend living in Vancouver, I believe.
Yeah, that's it.
Simon LaPlante.
That's it.
Oh, you listened to that one?
Yeah,
that's cool. Oh,
it's a good episode.
Yeah. Well, thanks for reminding me. I gotta reach out to them. I haven't talked to him since that interview. It's like I was thinking about him, so yeah, I should get in touch with him. But yeah, it's fascinating. I've got a friend that I went to university with. He's Persian. His name's Afshin. Shout out to you, Afshin. And he's going to come on, I believe, tomorrow. And I haven't seen him since my wedding day. So he was at my wedding. So that's 28 years ago. I've been married 28 years. So
wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm going to get to talk to him on the podcast and find out like what's his journey been like for the past 28 years, because he was born and raised in Iran. So what do they believe there? Are they Muslim, or are they Zoroastrian, or whatever they call it?
Zoroastrian.
Yeah. Do you know anything about that religion?
Yeah, I know a bit about Zoroastrian. I've read some stuff on it. I've read a book on it.
Is there fire or something?
Yeah, it's fire, and then they put the bones out for the birds to pick and take away. And
okay.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the Baha'i faith?
Yeah, I've read a book on the Baha'i as well. They're really interesting.
I think you might like that one.
Yeah, they're very open. They're very universal in their approach.
I believe I did interview one Baha'i. I can't really remember. I've had like over 300 guests now. But great to meet you. Thanks. I hope you come back again sometime. We can chat some more. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you wanted to say?
No, I feel good. It was a good conversation.
Cool.
I really appreciate you having me on the show.
I let my guests give like a closing thought, just a nice little short message about hope. So what would you say to anyone that's out there with their diverse worldviews?
We have more time than we think. We don't have to chase perfection, and love yourself.
Thank you very much. God bless you. You can do whatever your equivalent of prayer is for me. I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And keep in touch, and we'll try to have you back on. And you know how to book me with my Calendly. If you wanted to do that anytime, you got open invitation whenever you want to come back and chat. And if you want to freestyle it like we did today, or if you want to talk about specific issues, you can just email me or whatever.
Perfect, David. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Take good care.
No, you too.
Have a good night. God bless you.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.